Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I am here with the first kind of duping video of the year. Since I'm working on my singles this year and I'm trying to use them as much as I can, I ideally want to use every single one of them 25 times. I want to continuously this year do some duping videos of new palettes that come out that kind of tempts me, that I think are cool color stories, used to both kind of help me not splurge and also to get use out of my singles. So today we are tackling the Nomad Après-Ski palette. I think it's Chamonix. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's the Après-Ski, the newest release from Nomad. That palette really spoke to me. I feel like it's a beautiful color story. I love the greens in there, the purples, the blues, you know, aren't my favorite, but they're a little more kind of purpley undertone blues. So I feel like they're really stunning still, and the palette again just speaks to me. So again, I'm gonna dupe that out and I'm going to put that in this palette right here. So I have all my palettes next to me that I'm going to pull from today, and we're going to see how I get on. But before I jump into that, if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I would love to have you in the family. Let's jump into the video. Alright, so I'm going to start off with the palette. I think what I want to do is I wanted to pick out all the mattes first and then go into the shimmers, because I feel like the mattes are easier. I'm actually using the swatch picture and just pictures from Nomad on Instagram. I will have a link down below just because that's the picture that I'm using for reference. So again, I'm going to start off with the mattes. So the palette is divided by like a row of shimmer and mattes like this. So the first row, or like I guess column here, is shimmers. So we're going to move on to the second column first. I might pop on the picture that I'm looking at just so you can see. But yeah, I'm going to start off with this kind of more purpley row. So I need to find the right palette. This is obviously not it yet. We have some Colourpop palettes here, but I don't think anything. I do have some purpley tones down here, but I don't think they're the correct ones. We have my Cleona palettes, which has all used shimmers in it. But then here we do have some purples in this palette. Hopefully that is in frame. So from here I might be able to pull something in. I'm looking now for that deep purple that is on top, but I don't have anything like it in this specific palette, I feel like, but I might have it somewhere else. However, for the next shade over the kind of mid-tone purple, this one here is standing out to me. I think that one might be a really good pick. Yeah, I think that one kind of fits the vibe. Let me see the swatch as well. Yeah, I might need to be a little bit more cool toned. Yeah, I mean, I think this one is a little bit warmer than the palette. Let me have a look in my other palette too. I mean, I have that one, but I think that one is too purpley. Yeah, it is. I might pull that one in, but let me check in a different palette first. And that palette is this one right here. I was thinking of like this kind of shade here, but I think that one might be too cool toned. Actually, it's so hard. I feel like that one might be a bit more similar. But at the same time, I feel like it might be a bit too cool toned. In the palette, it looks more like that one, but in the swatch shimmer, it looks more like that one. I know she's a bit deeper than me, so that might be why it looks a bit more cool tone on her. I think for me, I want to pull in that one instead, because I feel like that is one that I would reach for more. And that shade is this one right here, which, let me see what shade it is. It is the Sydney Grey shade in the shade Haven. That is going to be the first one that I pull in, which is the matte right there. And then for the matte below it, we need something that's a little bit like more beige in undertone as well as lighter. And again, I think everything in here is a bit too purpley, so I'm going to go back to this kind of cool toned palette. And I mean, this one here could be a good option, but it's not that light. But it does kind of look like it, and I feel like, again, it does look lighter, but I might be because she's lighter in her skin tone. Yeah, I mean, I think that might be the best option that I have for that shade. So I think I'm going to pull in this shade, which I think is also from Sydney Grays. This one is the shade Winter Wonder. And yeah, I think that one suits the palette quite well. Then lastly, we just need something for that deep purple, and that is actually something that I feel like I'm lacking here. But let me have a look at the rest of my palettes. I mean, the only other palette that I have is this one right here. I'm actually looking at these shades, if this one is better. No, I think that one is a bit like a similar depth, so I'm going to stick with that one. But I have these purples right here. It's not as like vibrantly purple, I feel like, as that shade in the palette. But I feel like I'm really lacking something like that. I feel like these two, maybe this one would be the closest. But again, I feel like it's a bit too brown. Let me have a look in, because I do also have this palette here, which I don't think anything similar. But I do have my Colourpop palette right here. This is my pan palette in order. I've taken out the shade that I'm panning though, which wouldn't be a good fit anyway. But again, nothing really stands out to me as fitting. We do have that purple on here, but I think that one might be too light. Yeah, it's hard. Do I want something more brown or something more purple? I think maybe this purple actually. I think that one goes better with the vibe. So I think that is the one I'm going to pull in. So again, the next row we're going to skip because that is shimmers for now. So we're going to move on to the next one, which is the row of greens. Let me have a look. This is here is the palette that I'm thinking of going into for that. So yeah, let me go and look at these shades. So if we're looking at this palette, first up again, we have the deepest shade, which is like a deep green shade. It is kind of similar to this one, but I feel like the green in the palette is a little bit more foresty and not so like muted. It's kind of similar to undertone to like these here, but I don't really have anything like that exactly. So this one might be the shade that I pull in for that. Yeah, I mean, I think the swatch is close enough, so I'm gonna go with this shade, which I think is also from Sydney Grace. It is the shade Key Lime, so that's gonna be the first shade. Then moving down, we have a bit more of a kind of muted down green. Again, these two are kind of similar to that, so let me swatch both of these. We have that one, which has a little bit more blue to it, and then this one right here. And looking at these swatches, I feel like they both work, but I think this one here is a little bit closer, which is the one with a little bit more blue to it. And that one I think is, again, it's from Sydney Grace. This is the shade Poolside, so I'm going to pull that one in. Yeah, I think that I'm happy with those two. And then lastly, we have more of a minty type of green, and the thing that I think is closest is this one, I think. Let me swatch it out. Yeah, I think that one is closest. This one is the potted from the Juvia's Place Masquerade mini palette, and it's the shade Zulu. So I'm going to pull that one in. Alright, so I'm happy with that row. Yeah, I think that one is pretty close. The only one again is that green. I would have liked to have something a bit more similar to these two in undertone, but with that kind of depth, I guess. But yeah, I'm happy with that row. The last thing we have to do is that last row of blues. They're like kind of purpley blue, which fits very well to this bottom row. For the deep shade on that row, we don't have anything in this palette, but I think I do have something, but I'm gonna have to look in other palettes. And then for that other kind of more periwinkle blue type of shade, we do have a couple options. I think the ones that are looking at me right now are these like kind of here. I think this one is too purple, but this one maybe, or this one. So I'm going to swatch out both. We have these two. So that is the first one and then the second one. And I think in the palette, I think it's something like a mix between these two. What about this one? Is that too deep? You know what, like I think both of these would work. But the one that I personally feel like I want to lean towards is this one, which is from Davina. This is the shade Remy. So that one I think I'm going to pull in for that bluish purple at the end. Then we need the lighter one and that deep shade. So for the lighter one, I am leaning towards like these blues right here. Maybe this one I think is the closest. Yeah, it's quite a nice pale blue. So for the lightest shade, I am going to go with this one. I think it's the closest one I have. And this shade is, let me have a look. It is from Sydney Grace and it's the shade Cali. I'm going to pull that in for the light blue. So last thing to do for mattes is that deep kind of purplish undertoned yeah, just deep shade. It's almost a black, but it's a bit more of a purple shade. So let me see what I have for that. The one that was sticking out to me that I was thinking of is this shade here, which is the potted, I think, again from the Blueberry Muffins palette. Yes, it is, but I don't have a label on it right now, but that is what this shade is from. It is like a blackened kind of purpley shade. It does have a little bit more warmth to it than the shade in the palette, but that's the one that I'm thinking of. Let me see if I have a better option. We also have these shades. We have this one, for example, which isn't as deep, but it's a bit more kind of cool toned. So maybe that one would be a better option. I think both of them would work. I think this one would be something that I would work personally with more. So I think I'm going to pull this one in, even though it might not be exact to the palette. So I think I'm going to stick with those for the mattes. So let's move on to shimmers next. And first up in the palette, we do have an iridescent shade. It's like an iridescently kind of blue, well, from what I can see, it's like a blue to pink type of iridescent shade. And I do have some of them here. I want to see if some of these fit, or if they're like, yeah, if they use like the right tone. This one is really nice. It's a little bit maybe too purple. We have this shade, which is really stunning. Maybe that one is a good option. It has that like blue to pink shift. What is this shade? This shade is from the Pastel Rose. It's the shade Fairy Dust. So it's definitely an option. I do also have quite a few Cleona ones. And I could have a look at those too. And those are in here. I'm thinking of this one perhaps. Yeah, that one is quite nice. It's a little bit less purple than this. I don't know what you're going to see on the camera, but it's a little bit more kind of true to what the palette is, at least in that swatch. But I think I want something a bit more blue, like a bit more like, not purpley blue, but just like blue. But let's see what I can find. We have those two here. I want to see if I have anything in my, like these palettes. We have this one, which might have something. It has like this shade, which it does have that kind of more bluish undertone, but it doesn't have the shift that I need. So not that one. I think same with that one, is too green. So nothing in this palette. And then we have this palette right here, which again, I don't think it's going to have anything. Maybe this one, but I think again that's going to be too pink. Yeah, it is. So I think the best option I have is from my Cleona singles. It's going to be that iridescent right there. Or, did I swatch this one? Is that the one I swatched? That one might actually be better shout. Because that one is a little bit more blue. Yeah, I think that might be the one that I'm going to pull in, which, let me see what that is. It is Glow. I think Glow is going to be good for that first shade in the palette. So the next shade we have is like a pinky type of shade that looks to have a little bit of a shift to it, but nothing too like extreme. It goes from like a cool tone pink to almost like a peachy pink. And I'm looking at this one straight up because I feel like that one is quite a nice one. It might be quite similar actually, but it does have a green shift to it too, which isn't in the palette, but that might be a good option. Let's have a look at the rest of the palettes too. This is my Cleona palettes, of course. This one here looks quite close. Yeah, that one looks quite close actually. I think that one might be a good spot actually. Yeah, I think I will actually stop there. It's nice, and I think it is similar to the palette. It's not super shifty, but it is still shifty. It goes from like cool tone to a warm toned, and that is the shade Engrave. So I'm gonna pull that shade in. Then the last shade is like more of a plummy type of tone. We do have something like this, for example. I feel like this palette is a bit crooked, but hopefully it's in frame. That shade is quite similar. Might be a bit too warm toned. Let me have a good look at the swatch again. No, actually that might be quite close. That one is a good option, but let me have a look at the rest of my palette that is in Cleona. Maybe I'll have something in the other ones. This is kind of like my purple tone palette, but nothing really is sticking out to me. I mean, we have this one, which is actually also clear now, but it's not like, I think, shifty enough for that shade, not sparkly enough either. So nothing there, and I think nothing else from my other palettes too. No, I think that's the best shout I have, which is the one from this palette, and that is this shade here. Let me go ahead and get it out. And that is the shade King's Feast from Cleona. So that's going to be the last shimmer for that kind of pinkier row. So let's move on to the next row here. The next one is also an iridescent shade, which is more of a kind of green to pink. And looking at my Cleona, it's quite sparkly. Maybe this one would be a good shout. Yeah, the green is definitely there. Does it have a pink shift though? It does have a pink shift. So that one is actually a really, really good option. What about the other shade I swatched in here that also have like a green shift? Or like a green iridescent shade? I think that one is too... I was gonna say too blue. I think they both work, to be honest. What is this shade? It's the shade Bombshell from the Pastel Roses. That one is also a really good option. It's hard to just looking at the swatches in a photo or like a video. But yeah, that one is a good option. Let me see what I have in this palette too. If I have anything else like it. We have this shade, which also have a bit, but I think that's more gold. Yeah, that is definitely more gold, and it goes from a gold to a green, so that is not the right type of shift. I think I'm going to stick with the Cleona one, just because I feel like this row is a little bit warmer than the last one. So I'm going to go with this shade. I'm having a lot of Cleona shimmers, but I'm happy with that. This shade Phosphorescent, I'm happy with that shade for the first of the green row. Then moving down, we have like more of an icy type of like greenish shade again. It's like, yeah, it's like an icy green. That's how I describe it. This one might be too blue. I think it is. It's like too grayish blue. I was just looking at that because I had this palette open, but I didn't think that would fit. I think I have an idea of what I want for that shade. Nothing obviously in my purple palette. What about this palette here? This is like my cool toned. No, that's my warm tones. Then we have, of course, the last palette. It's always in the last palette, isn't it? Here. Anything here that would fit. I think this is Enceladus, maybe this one, but I feel like it's too grey and has like a pink shift to it, so no. I don't think that would work. No. The shade that I'm thinking of is actually in this palette here, and it's that shade. It's like a bluish type of, like it's a blue-green type of shade. Is it maybe too blue? No, I think that one is actually quite nice. This here is from Shine by SD, because it has like a blue to, like a greenish blue, like a teal, I guess, to cool toned. Yeah, I'm really looking at that. I also have the Terra Moon shade here, which is Half Moon, I believe. Yes, but it's very, very similar, and I think I'm already having that in a palette, so I think this one is actually the one that looks the most like it, so I'm going to pull that shade in. And then lastly, we have that deeper green, which is a bit more different than other shades that I have. Nothing in here. I don't think I have anything in my Cleona palette, like the one on the go. No. Here, do I have anything there? I don't think I have anything dark enough. Maybe this one, if anything. I think it's too blue. But let me swatch it out. Actually, that one looks quite nice, actually. That one could be good. I think it's a little bit more shifty than the one in the palette. This one has more of a blue shift, but I think it might tie in well with the blue row. So I think I'm going to pull that one in. So that would be the next shade. I was looking at my Cleona shades, but I think I'm going to stick with that. And then the last thing we have to do is the kind of blue row at the very end. So the first one's a bit of an interesting one because it looks more like a grey tone. It has a bit of a kind of cool toned sparkle to it, but it's not super blue. I'm looking at this one, but I think that one might be too, yeah, it's too pink. What about this shade? I think my collection is quite shifty, but that one looks quite nice. It's definitely a bit more shifty than the one in the palette, but that one is potentially one. I don't think I have anything else good in that palette. Let me see my kind of cool toned palette and if there's anything in there that I think fits better, which is this one right here. Again, it doesn't really have like a base very much, but what about that one? That one is, I think, again, too shifty. We have like this one. I think that one is too like greeny, bronzy. Yeah, I think it's hard, but I think it's like a slightly like purpley but cool toned. Which, how hard should it be to find a shade like that? I feel like it's not that unique, but I still can't seem to find anything like it. In here, do I have anything in this palette? Not really. And then we have my Cleona shades, but I don't recognize that shade from my Cleona palette. Like I should have something like that. I'm quite stumped by that shade, if I'm being honest. I am leaning towards this shade. I know it's not exact, but it's one that I would like to get more use out of anyway. It's the shade Rosette from Terra Moons. It's a bit more shifty, it's a bit more of a base, but I'm gonna pull that shade in. I think it works quite nicely with that purple too. So I'm gonna go with that one. I know it's not exact, but that's the one I'm gonna go with. Then below it we have like a blue, almost like a pure blue mid-tone shimmer. It's really, really stunning. When I look at like the swatches, it looks like it has a bit of a purple shift. So I was looking at maybe like this one, but I think that's too iridescent. We have like this one. Well, that one has like a green shift, wouldn't work. What about this one? That one? No, it's too pink. Again, a bit of a harder shade. Let me have a look at the other palettes. I mean, again, I think this one might be the closest. It didn't swatch the best because it needs like glitter glue, but it is quite close. It's a little bit more iridescent than the one in the palette, but I do think it's quite close actually. And that one is from Shine by SD. It's one of the reserve. It's the reserve number 4. I am going to pull that one in. I think that is the closest that I have. It's like that blue to purple. So I think I'm going to go with that one, even though it looks quite different in the palette though. And then for the final shade, we have like just a royal blue. It doesn't seem to have a black base. I was thinking about Spire, but I think Spire might be too deep. So I'm gonna have a look at my Cleona shadows though, because I don't think I have anything else in my other palettes, but I might do here. What about the shade Spire Light? I believe I have that one in my collection. I believe it's this one, but it might be too purple. Yeah, it is Spire Light. But Spire Light might be, yeah, it's too purple. We have this one, which is very kind of royal blue, but it has like blackened base. And then we have Spire Light, sorry, not Spire Light. We have Spire. Yeah, I mean, that one is nice too, but it's more of a blackened base. And I also feel like that shade is a bit more purple. So I'm leaning towards that one, which is the shade, let me have a look, Lunette, I think? Yes, it is Lunette. I think that's going to be the one that I'm going to pull in for that blue. And I think with that, I'm happy with my palette. This is what it looks like. Pull it back in frame. And let me also give it a bit more space. I think those last 2 rows are a bit crowded. So yeah, there we have it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to insert the swatches of the palette where I made it. I'm really happy with this. I'm going to play around with this and try to get my kind of the fix for this palette. I feel like it's a beautiful color story. It's a really, really fun one. And even though my palette isn't necessarily exactly the same, I know the shades that I might be missing. I'll probably have in other palettes, and I'm really happy with my iteration. So yeah, I'm excited to play around with this one for the next coming, like, I don't know, weeks or so. I'll probably try to do another palette with this like this next month, but it depends on what's released. If there's nothing that tempts me, I probably won't do it, but I will try to do this kind of series this year for palettes that are tempting me. But yeah, I hope you guys are having an amazing day wherever you are, and I will catch you in my next one. Bye guys!